Hi, y'all. It's Bridget Cutshaw with Real Things Living. Today, my guest is Jason Silver. He's a founder of two startup companies and the founder of two kids. I like that. And he's the author of an upcoming book called Your Grass is Greener. Can you say hi, Jason?
I can. Hi. Thanks a ton for having me, Bridget.
This is awesome. I'm so glad we connected. I like to use the word awesome, but I like to connect with awesome people like you because you're being very open about the challenges that you've dealt with your businesses and so forth. Because being an entrepreneur, I guess that's the right word, that is harder than some people think. You have to have a lot of tenacity. Is that the right word? Got to keep going. And the first thing that got me attracted to you, of course, is that you're an author. And I love books, I love reading. And I'm just curious what prompted you to write this book. Is it Your Grass is Greener, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's a kind of positive that came out of a really gigantic negative. I know, because you had a chance to read the book and thanks for doing that before we chatted. But uh yeah, everything in my life, I guess, when looking back was up and to the right. Very fortunate to be able to say that. And, like you mentioned, I'd founded a couple companies and I was fortunate to be at Airbnb in its earlier days, and I was working on my third company, which was in AI back before it was the coolest thing on the planet to do, and it had all the stresses that you mentioned. Raised venture capital money, growing the team, it's scaling fast, yada yada yada. And then one day, my parents left on vacation. I think they were in Mexico or something like that. I can't quite remember. And the next day or the day after, I got a call from my sister, and she was in the emergency room at the hospital. She had gone into her doctor's office for like a regular checkup, not like, "Hey, there's something wrong. What's going on?" It was like, "Hey, I haven't seen you in a year. How are things going?" The doctor sent her to the ER. She was kind of, freaking out, and I went down to the hospital, and it was really clear really fast that things were really wrong. Um, what wound up happening is, they found that she had a very late stage, very aggressive form of cancer, and, 9 months later, she passed away, and that was obviously a huge moment in my life, and it had me kinda rethink all of the assumptions I had about how I was living, and the book is kind of a mix between, how I kinda dealt with the grief and how I kinda channeled that into changing my relationship with work and learning how to use work as one of the biggest positive drivers in my life rather than something to just kind of grit through and push and endure until I can retire and enjoy my life then because, you know, I didn't want to be so over invested in the future and so under invested in the moment.
I like how you recognize that. Being in the moment is so important. And unfortunately, your family and you had to deal with that with your sister. And it's so important to, I think it's beautiful that you kind of took that situation and created this book to try to help other people because we learn from other stories like this. And we all have great stories to share. And I'm glad that you're being honest, like why you wrote this book. And I just got chills when you said that. 'Cause I just couldn't imagine, having to deal with that with a sibling. And is she your only sibling? Or
Yeah, she was it's my big
oh,
sister.
oh yeah,
Still,
that's
it's like
harder.
five years ago, and sometimes I share the story and it comes out like I'm telling you what I had for breakfast this morning, and other times, it's like it is now. It's still rough, it doesn't get better, it just gets
Right.
different.
It's just different. And I think she'd be proud of you knowing, as a big sister, that she would be proud of you what you're doing. And life, unfortunately, I mean, we have all these really bad bumps in the road and we have to figure out a way to move forward. And I think you writing this book probably helped you nail it down how
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, like in retrospect, it's funny, you look back and it always seems like there's a plan. Oh, this made sense. I did this thing and that thing and this thing, and look at how cleanly it went. But at least I do. I think most of us have a way of like misremembering the ups and downs in the moment. And in retrospect, I look back and I think like, yeah, I'm I'm very proud that I wrote this book, and it was a great way to kind of pay it forward, so to speak. It didn't start that way. It started as like purely a coping mechanism. And I didn't start thinking I'm going to write a book, I'm going to dedicate it to my sister. It was, I cannot cope. I need to figure out what's going on in my life. I got a young kid. My sister's just passed away. I've got a startup. All these people rely on me and yada, yada, yada. It's just not working. I could feel that there was only one way I was going, and it wasn't the way you want to go. And it was like the journey of going through that and stripping away a lot of the assumptions I had and really trying to figure out like, what are the truths, as I'm working my way through. And the book came out the other end. And, I'm kind of proud of it now for two reasons. Like, one, it's the first thing I've done in my career that I did purely for the creative endeavor of it. Like, I wasn't thinking about, I'm going to create this book and it's going to do XYZ for me or make ABC money. It
Right.
was like, I really want to make a very enjoyable book for someone to read. And we'll see what happens if I put all my energy into that. And, the second piece is, I feel like I'm kind of going against a lot of conventional wisdom, which is something I always just enjoy doing. So it's not surprising to me that it wound up here, but it's not to me that I intentionally did up front. Where a lot of books and advice is go find your dream job, go develop your skills and improve this or that. I wound up writing a book about how like, no, you're actually already pretty awesome. You have some skills that you can put to work. Rather than trying to find something different to do or learn something different or get some new job, there are a bunch of insights in the book that I think can help people take what they're already really great at and change the situation that they're already in a way that's going to make work an incredible positive driver in their life. I have this thing now where like, I don't think you get a dream job. I think you practice it. And the problem is nobody tells us how to practice. There's not a lot of good advice out there for that. The best you find is like work smarter, not harder, which I find offensive. I don't wake up every day thinking to myself, like, okay, what's the dumbest way I can go about my work today? Like, I'm trying to work smart. What do I do? But nothing comes after that nice, pithy statement. It's like, work smarter, not harder. It's like, okay, great. How? I tried to write the how to there of like, there are some small things that you can do that are very common challenges at work. If you can talk or type, you can try every tactic in my book. And my hope is that it's, turn around your experience at work.
I, um, I was very fortunate, like Jason mentioned, I was able to read it prior to this call. And my takeaway, he had mentioned that is use those skills that you already have, right? You're already awesome. You People focus too much. They think they're an imposter. They couldn't do something. And that is a mindset, right? You've got to something that you're telling yourself for some reason. I don't know why that is, but you do have to unblock that and open up your mind to you don't have to go do something fancy, right? You've got stuff right in front of you and how to improve it. You do have to tweak a little bit, I'm sure, right?
Yeah, it's not no work. If you were doing everything perfectly in a way that makes your life amazing, then you should write a book, and I would love to read that book.
Right.
Presumably there's some stuff that's not going great. I've chosen to focus on work. Reason why it's like it's where my background is, and short of sleep, it's the activity that we spend the most time doing in our lives. And what I kind of learned is some small changes to the way that I'm working can have a big impact to my experience at work. And when I'm doing better at work, I feel better at work. And when I feel better at work, I'm feeling better in the rest of my life. And when that's happening, I'm doing better at work. And it's this like amazing virtuous cycle. And what was interesting is a lot of the stuff that I learned, what kind of got me to the end conclusion of the book. And again, it sounds so nice and tight wrapped up at the end, but I only had that insight looking back was I basically because I was struggling so hard, I got rid of all my preconceived notions and assumptions I had about the way I was supposed to work. And I
Right.
ran a bunch of like Tim Ferriss style experiments pointed at work. I'm going to set more goals, less goals, no goals, work 4 days a week, 5 days a week, 6 days a week, mornings, evenings, whatever. I did all these different experiments. And what I found was counterintuitively, I thought when I added things to my job, when I added things to work, a new skill, a new project, a new job title, whatever it might be, when I added these things in, that's what was going to make me feel and do way better. And what I actually saw as I kind of went through this experimentation and I was like deep on this, like every 2 weeks, it was a new set of experiments. I had a tracker, I was seeing how it was helping and whatever. What I found is actually removing things had the biggest impact, right? An example of that is miscommunication. Like miscommunication is a massive problem in offices. It costs the average employee a full day of lost productivity every single week. Okay. It's a huge, huge time suck and it's really frustrating, right? You and I are working on a project. We have some kind of miscommunication. I go off, I do a whole bunch of work. I get back together with you in 2 weeks to give you an update. Turns out I did all of the wrong work. I only find out about that after we get back together and have a chat about it. I'm like, shoot, I wish I had known this earlier. Very frustrating, big waste of time. And the solution to it is not like go and become an expert communicator. It's like just here's a tactic that will have a massive impact. And you just have to get a little bit better, just better enough at a small handful of problems across work. And you can see a huge, huge advantage. And you don't need a new skill to fix these miscommunications. And as I saw this kind of stuff, they just started stacking and stacking and stacking. And it was like, oh, wow, there's, a book here, which I was hesitant to write, but I got a lot of helpful pushes from folks in my network and friends and colleagues. And it wound up with me now talking to you, which is awesome.
That's that's great. It's as you were talking, uh, made me think of the work-life balance that people push. I should say push. There's really I don't think that's the right term. I think I like the word it's kind of like a rhythm. You like
Yeah.
you can't be exactly so many hours at work, so many hours, at home, your life. It is depending on what you mentioned, you gotta take some things out of your life too, because it can be distracting. And I think what I remember reading in your book is to choose, is it 3 things, to focus on, right?
Yeah. Well, so productivity is one that comes up all the time,
Right.
and there are a million and one productivity hacks.
Yeah.
And they're all great and helpful. And I tried most, if not all of them. And what I found again is one of these kind of unconventional thoughts that was actually the most helpful for me is you take your to-do list and instead of having an endless to-do list like we all have, if you want to get more done, write a not to-do list,
I
right? And the not to-do list is all about being really intentional about, okay, what am I intentionally not going to do this week? These are important things. They're things that's going to feel not great to delay them a little bit, but like you said, pick 3. That's what I recommend for folks. It's a nice round number. I make 3 big bets for a week. So you take your big giant to-do list, you pick the top 3 most important, most urgent, most impactful things that you need to get done this week. You write those down, and every other thing on your to-do list goes into your not to-do list, and you're intentionally choosing not to do them. And they'll wait for you. They're still going to be there next week.
right?
But you will make way more significant progress on the 3 most important things because you're clear about what you're not going to do. And I find that I don't need to add an extra, 3 hours at night here and 4 hours over the weekend here to get it all done. I've kind of removed some stuff, and instead I'm gonna make way more progress on the 3 most important things. And so this not to-do list was the thing that kind of unleashed my productivity simply by defining what I'm intentionally not gonna do, and then sticking to it, which is a whole other problem, which we can talk about if you want. How
You're
to avoid
right.
distractions.
Right, as you were talking, you mentioned the word important. I've learned to, based on, your experience and my experiences, you gotta focus on it has to be important to you, right? And not to I shouldn't say that, not to other people. It has to be important to you because it's your time.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
people will fill your time. Like, that is a common rule, if you leave the space open and you don't define how you spend your time, other people will do that for you. They'll fill your calendar, they'll pull you into stuff if you're not being intentional about what you are and aren't doing. Your time, I mean, at least my time has a way of filling itself. That's never
oh,
been a
I
problem for me.
I'm the same way. I always wanna help people, but at the same time, like, why am I doing you gotta remember, why are you doing this? And it goes back to your foundation of what's important and using those skills that you have. It is just so critical. We take ourselves for granted, right? I'm very guilty of that.
Yeah, and I think like on the productivity front, it kind of boiled down to the two things, one of which you mentioned, which was like, okay, how do you be more clear about the most important things? And, I won't go into all the details, but you can read about how to pick your three big bets in the book. And this idea of the not to do list was really helpful. And so what I learned from that is actually like not doing something, in my experience, is way harder than doing it.
Ah, I
It's
like
way
yeah,
harder not to do a thing. Like, how do I not help you when you come to my desk with a request that is a very valid request? It's way easier for me to say, sure, I have a minute to help you. And then you and I chat for a minute, which turns into 60 minutes, which turns into 90 minutes. And then I get to the end of the day and I don't have time to get my own work done. I'm rushing out the door to go pick up my kids or whatever it might be. It's way harder for me not to help you in that moment than it is to just dive in and help. And so not doing is harder than doing in my experience. And one of the things I cover in the book is like once you have the not to do list, how do you say no to people? Because it's deeply uncomfortable to say no because we're social creatures. We want to help. And I'm not saying you should like show up in your office or your home office or wherever you work and like put on the blinders and the headphones and like, don't bother me. Don't come talk to me. If you come, I'm going to rip your head off. Like, that's not what we want at all.
right.
But one of the most helpful things I've found is when you write a not to do list and somebody brings you a thing to help with that's not on your to do list, which is small, it's only three things. Instead of saying no to them, what you can say instead is, you know, ask for their input. Right now, I think these three things are the most important for me. How do you see it? How does
Right.
your thing stack up against these things? 9 times out of 10, they will say no to themselves. Oh yeah, Jay, those things are really more important than this. I can go and get Bridget to help me with this, or this can wait a week for us to chat about it. It would be totally fine. Most often, they will say no to themselves, and the rest of the time, or like when I say no, when I say that they'll say no to themselves, what I mean is they'll either decide it can wait or they'll solve the problem themselves. The rest of the time, you might learn, oh, geez, this thing is more important than what I was thinking I was doing, and you switch them out. But
Right.
that's key is you don't want to just put it on your to-do list. You want to take something off and put this thing on, like force your brain to make the trade-off. And in those situations, that's great. You're pivoting as the week goes on and you need to do that kind of stuff. But for me, really, productivity was all about psychology, not process. Like, how
That's
do I psychologically say no?
that's a really good point because when I was in the corporate world, it's all about the process. You had to follow all this stuff. And that I think I think a lot of people are getting, from my understanding, burned out. I know someone personally who got burned out from all that stuff. And
It's not hard.
yeah, right. And I was just wondering, based on your experience and with all the companies that you have worked with and for, um, what do you recommend someone who's feeling some burnout? Do you think it's because they have too much on their to-do list maybe, or the productivity issue with the company? I'm
Yeah,
just
I mean, it's hard to have kind of one size fits all
yeah,
solutions for this, but I think one thing that I've found is has been true for me is usually the time when I need some space, whether that's to like take a full break or to just break my routine a little bit so I can think strategically about what I need to accomplish. But the the time when I need to take space is usually coming at a time when it feels the least convenient to take space, the least right to take space.
right.
And it's only through doing it over and over and over and pounding it into my thick skull that like when it feels like that, that's not a signal not to take the space, it's the opposite. And so if you're feeling burned out, it's likely that you're in a position of just like, I have so much to do. You're maybe not taking a break, or maybe you're not stepping back to say, is there a more leveraged way that I can accomplish these things? Or can some of this stuff wait? Like that strategic thinking. You might not be doing it because you think, oh, I'm just going to get more behind and more stuff and more is going to pile on. And that stuff may or may not be true. But when you can step back for a moment and just kind of look at what's going on, it can be hugely, hugely helpful. So if you're stuck feeling like you're in a moment of burnout,
Right.
maybe I would give you a small push to say, can you take a step back, even if it's just carve out an hour in your day in a way that you wouldn't usually, like just book a 1 hour meeting with yourself. And that meeting can be something very out of the ordinary for you. Walk around the block for 15 minutes, go sit down at the coffee shop at the bottom of your office or in a different part of your house and just take your mind out of the day-to-day tactical stuff and say, what's going on? How should I organize this? What do I want the next week to feel like? Can be very helpful.
I like how you mentioned that changing your environment a little bit can help if you're feeling, it's just taking a break, taking a step. It just could be for a few minutes. And that's one of the reasons why I'm one of those. I like to go outside for walks or I go running. I joke that I won't choke people. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. But not really. But it's just something as a parent, you understand, the stress from work and I should say the stress, but I'm sure you're applying all these lessons with your children, right? As a parent, you gotta show them the right way to handle stuff, not just at
Yeah,
work.
it's funny how much this stuff overlaps, right? It's like a lot of times, at least for me, I care about accomplishing a lot of stuff. And so taking a half a step back from work for a moment can make me feel guilty, right? My team is cranking on things. Who am I to step back right now? They're waiting for something from me. Same thing happens to me at home with the kids. Like I need a break from my children right now. I love them deeply, but I feel guilty that I'm not with them doing X, Y, Z. Meanwhile, if I have to do another, the 15th baseball practice or whatever it might be, like in that moment, I just need a breather for a sec. It can be very hard. And that's why that thought from earlier of like the moment when it feels the least beneficial to take that break is probably the
When you
moment where it is the most beneficial. And just trying to call out that I don't mean necessarily go sit on a beach with a beer, that might be your thing. Often at work, I take a break by doing a different kind of work, right? Instead of working on the spreadsheet, I'll work on a pitch deck. Instead of the pitch deck, I'm going to write a thing, with the kids, same kind of a thing. Okay, we've done this a couple times. I feel like I need a break from it. Like, let's go play this game instead of that game or do this activity instead of that activity. And just kind of getting a break in some way, shape, or form can be a huge, huge help.
that is a great input that you provided. You just gotta just it's like maybe a task, change your task a little bit. I know a lot of people say they're multitaskers, and I don't think that's not good. I mean, maybe they're, just just trying to distract themselves on purpose, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of stats around this. It's like in the chapter where I talk about prioritization, which you brought up earlier. There are some shocking statistics about multitasking. And I think people think that they're great at multitasking, and I think for the most part they're wrong. It's true that some people are multitaskers as a very, 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 very insignificant portion of the population. For the rest of us, myself included, there's been a lot of studies to show that we suck at it. And my favorite one is if you have your messages open while you're working. So I'm not even saying you're replying to them, but if you have like Slack open or your email open or your text message open, your brain having to process that it's there and knowing that the feed's there and having to check in on it, even when you're not replying, drops your IQ by double the impact of smoking marijuana.
Wow.
And you wouldn't show up to work high. I hope. I don't know everybody who's listening to the podcast, and I'm not recommending that you do that. Presumably, you wouldn't show up to work high, and yet we're all doing something that is impacting us cognitively by twice that impact, right? And so that's just from being aware of the fact that the messages are coming in because it's open somewhere on one of my screens. You know, that's how bad we are at multitasking, and I think that's I'm a big fan of pulling away from that. I think we went nuts when the word priority went from singular, meaning the single priority, to now all of a sudden I have priorities and prioritization and many, many, many priorities. It's tough. And that's a spot that I think a little bit more discipline can be very helpful.
Right, and I think that the word itself can be just the word itself, prioritization can confuse people and stress them out because they're not just a lot of people aren't just at work, they got families at home, and
For sure.
that's
For sure.
what it is.
For
And
sure. For sure.
you I had some, not messages, excuse me, some thoughts that came up and when I was a working mom. Holy cow, that was, insane. But I joked that I survived, but I couldn't do it alone. I had some great coworkers and a great spouse, and that's something you'd still have to work these out. It's just life is complicated, Jason, as you know.
Agreed. Agreed. And that's why I don't love the whole work life balance narrative because
Yeah,
there are times at work when I'm thinking about in quotations life. There's times in life when I'm thinking about in quotations work, and I'm not two people. I can't separate them from each other. And I don't have like work friend balance. I don't have like life play balance. I don't have, sleep life balance. Like for some reason we've just kind of picked this out and we use the word balance. And I think it is done with all of the best intentions, but it winds up in a position where I picture this scale and I'm trying to always balance this scale perfectly. Meanwhile, I don't think it exists.
Right, it doesn't exist, it adds stress, and I don't know where I learned this, but I read it the word rhythm. It's your life is like a rhythm. It's kinda like a little wave maybe, and you
Yeah.
just gotta go with it, shouldn't say the flow, but you still have to set some boundaries on
Yeah.
everything.
One of the things I've started doing, and this was advice, I wish I came up with this, but this is advice I got from a mentor of mine. He worked at Google, and I'm very fortunate for the advice was to start thinking about my life in terms of seasons.
Uh-huh.
And what I really like there is what he was saying to me is, I mean, look at a professor. Okay, if you're a professor in college, there are semesters when you're teaching, and that has a certain kind of workload, and you're in a research lab, and that has a certain kind of workload, and there's a semester or more when you're not doing those things. And so a lot of professors will, be deep on teaching, then be deep on research, and then they'll be deep on writing, and they have seasons. It's like a seasonality to their year. And I thought, oh wow, that must be nice for them. The advice went in one ear and out the other. And as I kind of stewed on it for longer, as what usually happens is you're like, this was a very intelligent comment that I moved past, a little bit too quickly. And once I started thinking about seasons, you mentioned rhythm. I've started thinking about the seasons. Like, what does my year look like? When you zoom out to that level, it's pretty often that what you'll see is there's a seasonality to your work and a seasonality to your life. There are certain times of the year where there are more holidays, more family commitments, more things you're doing with friends. There are certain times of the year when you're closing a quarter or you're releasing a new product or whatever it might be when there's more stuff happening at work. And I started to think about those seasonally and saying, okay, this is like when I do these kinds of things and those kinds of things and these kinds of things. And now I have seasons and I have a structure to my year where this season's
Yeah,
a little
yeah.
bit more work heavy and that's okay. And this season is more on these things. And because the nature of what I'm doing is tweaking around from season to season, I think it really helps me prevent burnout because it's not like this flat line going across the entirety of my year. There's a total season shift of, hey, the sun's out, I'm at the beach versus it's snowing outside, I'm going snowboarding. Like, very, very, very different things.
Right, I like that, I've heard that, the season, before, I like that. And another word that I like too for people who are as you get older too, we call it the next chapter, right? It's like your book is your life or your life is a book. Am I saying it correctly? And we all have to talk about the next chapter. And you are to your next chapter. It's kind of how I see it because you got this book coming out and it's going to help people probably more than you realize, Jason. You're going to get, I believe, you're going to get some great feedback from people. And it just gives you
Yeah.
a lot of credibility just to, it really does. I know you don't think so, but you put
Yeah.
a lot of effort into and I think it's just so wonderful what you're doing, and I think, one last question I have for you is, what do you think would be the one takeaway for those that are listening on what you're offering with your book? What do you I know that's kinda vague, but what do you think is the most important thing?
Yeah. It's good. It's a good question. It's,
I'm trying to narrow it down just to one
yeah. I'll,
maybe
I'll
2
back
things.
it up a half a step and broaden your question, and then I'll try to
Yeah,
answer it very
yeah,
specifically. So
yeah.
if you'll indulge the like
That's
meander
okay.
to your point,
That's okay.
I think, I get asked versions of this question, and it's like, how is the book different? Is kind of the first thought that pops to mind for a lot of folks. And I chose to write a book, and it turns out this book is in a space that is really, really big. There's a lot you can read in this general space. The challenge that I found is that like a lot of us don't have time to read 50 different books. And most books that are very, very tactical are very, very narrow, meaning they will teach you to be a deep expert on communication, a deep expert on prioritization. And the challenge with that is what I've seen is we all face a small handful of challenges at the office. becoming a deep expert at prioritization is not going to help you solve the miscommunications that are happening. And if you just go deep on that one area, you're not going to like improve the others. And therefore, you might not see as much of a bump as you want. And what I wanted this book to be is like the best Swiss Army knife. There are better knives than a Swiss Army knife, a sharper knife, probably some like Japanese Ginsu knife or something. But if you're going into the woods and you can only bring one tool with you, I'm definitely bringing the Swiss Army knife because it's going to help me do, a handful of
Yes.
jobs. And I wanted the book to be that. You've got a small handful of challenges at the office. I take the most common challenges and I show you a very tactical solution. And I think that's what I wanted for the book. And to answer your question of like, what do I want the people to take away, like in one singular thought, it's that you have way more agency than I think you do. Meaning you might be sitting in a position where you feel like because your boss is like XYZ or your job requires ABC, you can't change things. It has to be the way it is. And what I learned from flipping a lot of my assumptions upside down is actually you have way more agency than you think. It's just not in the way that you expect. And that's what I want to show people is that there's a small handful of tactics that you can try at the office. I promise if you can talk or type, you can try every single one of them and you will see for yourself. And the whole concept is about stop thinking about what job you do. You don't have to change the work you need to get done. The deliverables you have to do at the end of the week can all stay the same. But there are some small changes you can make to the how you're working. And when you do that, it has compounding benefits. And that's what I want people to take away is you don't have to feel stuck. You can have a lot more agency than you probably even know that you have right now.
I love that. I love that in that, what's the word? The summary of what you're doing, 'cause I think it's really, really helpful. I read a lot of books, Jason, and this is helpful, and you're just like, "Oh, I have," even as I was reading it, ideas just popped into my head, and I think that's what you just little simple things, little steps, I think is really helpful.
That is the greatest compliment you can give me is that, you're reading the book and something that you wouldn't have otherwise thought about popped into your head. And, I can't wait to hear what you do with it. But I think that's the greatest compliment is,
It is.
it opens up a door in some way, shape, or form.
It really, truly does. So for those that are listening, where can people learn more about you or connect with you, Jason?
So the book itself, yourgrassisgreener.com, that's the best place to head to. It'll take you to the page. You'll see the book there. If you do buy the book, thank you a ton. If you do, it opens up a whole bunch of bonuses for you, which you can get through the website there. There's other stuff about me. You can contact me directly through the website there as well, which I love folks to do. But yourgrassisgreener.com, you'll see the whole book there and it'll redirect you to like you want to buy it on Amazon or Barnes and Noble or whatever makes sense for you. But that would be the spot I would love folks to check out. And always welcome people getting in touch, especially if they've picked up the book and can tell me that it has helped them in some way, shape, or form. Would love to hear that.
That's really awesome. And so for those that are listening, I'll include the link in the description. And thank you for your wise information, Jason. It's been really helpful. Even someone like me, you just never know things that we suppress in our brains, right? You just got to have an open mind, right?
Well, thanks to you for having me on, and thanks to everybody who's listening and made it all the way through with us. It's I really genuinely am very grateful for the opportunity to talk to you and talk to folks on the podcast as well. So thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. And thanks for listening.